what's sort of going on at the Wellington Airport?
Well, it is an interesting one. One of the great things about communities is that you have facilities that the community likes to use. But unfortunately, we need to find money as a council to pay for those facilities. And as much as we'd love to have all the facilities that we've got across our region all have dedicated use, sometimes you just don't get enough use out of those individual users to pay for them. The airport in Wellington is one of those things that does have multi-use as the direction, I believe, that council needs to go forward to be able to justify that facility. We have planes that land on that. That's not surprising for an airport. We also have drag car racing at that particular airport, which sounds a bit unusual for an airport, but you've got a long, straight piece of bitumen, which is perfect for drag racing. There are other things such as driver training that are on there. There might even be in the future some testing of some different types of aircraft. So I think the way forward for that facility, rather than it cost too much money for the community, is for multiple uses of that facility to be used going forward.
So what's council proposing to do?
Really, at this stage, it's going to report to council for councillors to give direction to our staff. But from the discussions we've already had amongst councillors and from the report that's going through to council, it really is that multi-use strategy. Again, having aircraft land there, having drag strip racing there, having things such as driver training, but also other driver uses. So, for example, brake testing. There is one facility that would like to do some brake testing on that particular facility. Even around the airport or around the airstrip, you've got the ability for other buildings to be used, and we do get some income now for one particular building that's used there for some testing of fire equipment. So again, not essential for it to be on an airport, but using that open land that we've got there and some of the hangar space that we've got there, getting more hangars there, getting leases on those hangars. So really adding all these different uses up hopefully gets us to the point where we can generate enough income to actually pay for the existence of that facility. And that will probably rely on trying to get some money out of a different level of government, state or federal, to do some resurfacing on that actual runway itself, because that needs a bit of work at the moment as well.
And how much use does the Wellington Airport get?
Well, it depends which part you're talking about. And let's go back kind of pre-COVID, because obviously things change a bit during COVID. For actual aircraft landing, so when you look at the data that we've got recorded, over the last 4 years, it's averaged around about anywhere from, say, 22 landings per month to up to 28 landings per month, the average sort of landings on an annual basis. So not a huge amount of aircraft are landing there, maybe less than one per day might land there, for example. Drag racing, the drag strip racing has about maybe 10 meetings a year. And for those 10 meetings a year, effectively, the airport is closed as an airport, and then the drag racing is all set up there so that people can't land there. In an emergency, they still can. They can clear the runway quickly of the drag racing and actually have an emergency landing, but effectively that aircraft or that airport is closed for normal aircraft to land there. Driver training, brake test training, some of those other things, that's really a bit of a ad hoc usage. So it might be once every few months you might get that. And we haven't actually said yes to the brake test testing at this stage because of the wear and tear it might put on the actual pavement. The actual driver training that's been there has been done, again, pre-COVID. Once every few months there's some driver training there.
There's a note in the report about questions over how many aircraft are actually landing on the runway at the airport there. Do you have any information about how many are going without being recorded?
It's a really interesting one. And when you talk to some of the locals around there, they do talk about the fact that some people don't call in their landing. Now, they're meant to. That's part of the process. If you're flying an aircraft, when you're coming into land, it's a self-regulated airport, so you should actually call in to tell aircraft around the area that you're coming to land. You actually say your registration number of your aircraft and then make sure there's no other other aircraft that are going to land at the same time, obviously from a safety perspective. The problem is that that's how we record the aircraft that land there, and that's how we charge those aircraft. When they announce their registration number, we get what's called AV data, and that AV data tells us what the aircraft is or who owns that aircraft, and then we charge those aircraft accordingly. Some of the locals say that some aircraft land there without making an announcement, which again is illegal and is dangerous, but they land without making the announcement because then they're not charged a fee. Now, we've done a little bit of work on that, and we've worked out over the period that we've been looking at some of this data over the last 4 years, for example, there have been approximately 94 landings when we can work out that a plane did land there but didn't actually make any announcements. There might also be an argument that even more planes land there that we're not seeing at all. And again, we haven't got the record of that. So how many of those planes are landing there? You wouldn't think a significant number, otherwise we'd notice lots of planes landing there, but I'm sure there are a few others that land there from time to time without making those announcements to avoid paying the fee.
Would that be a large amount of money that's not being paid and therefore not going towards the airport's maintenance?
Not really, because it would have to be a significantly higher number than what it is at the moment. To give you an idea, if you'd look at the last 4 years, the average monthly income from landings has been $158, and that's from an average of 24 landings per month. So even if it was half of the landings we didn't know about, so if it was 48 landings per month, we're only missing out on $158 per month in those landings. And again, this is part of the whole argument, I suppose. It's about different sources of income. So we still want to get the money from those landings, but there's also other revenue streams we need to look at to see if we can generate income from the airport. Having said that, we think it would be much better if all the aircraft that land there made the announcements from a safety perspective and then also paid what's the fair share of their landing fees. And again, you can see they're not huge landing fees. If 24 landings a month only generate $158, it's not incredibly expensive to actually land there. When you compare that, for example, to the cost of owning and running an aircraft, and just to keep your pilot's license up to date, for example, the landing fees aren't significant in the whole scheme of things. But for some reason, people really don't want to pay those landing fees.
Yeah, as you said, it's obviously not a huge sum of money. Do you have any insight as to why people might be dodging the landing fees? Could it be just that they don't know?
Oh, no, they know. I think it really is just that, Molly. I think it's really just if they can avoid that little extra bit that they have to pay in a landing fee, then sometimes people, even though they might have the money available, sometimes people choose not to make those calls so they don't pay those landing fees. It's just a pure financial decision. And sometimes there's that Aussie thing, I think, where you want to beat the system. If you can beat the system and not pay that small amount of money, then sometimes people do that.